Okay, get your makeup on. Oh, here he comes. Oh. David, everything was wonderful. We really enjoyed it. Thank you for killing yourself.
Anyway, I must go.
Okay.
Times. Here are buried the earliest members of the family. The Molyneux family is the greatest ancient landed family in the whole of Lancashire. They achieved nobility comparatively late, but they were settled in this area and stayed there more or less continuously from the 12th century. The Earls of Derby, much better known, who lived just over the road, about 10 miles away, in Knowsley Hall, and whose earliest forebears are buried in Ormskirk Parish Church, are relatively newcomers, parvenus, and did not come to Lancashire till 1385 and only got their estate through marriage with the heiress of the Latham family. The Molyneux were already here, established knights and owning land, and had a loyal and strong tenantry, and were patrons of this church. This church is not outstanding for its antiquity, although it is an ancient church, and there was a church on this site from about 1200. It's because of the quality and unique character of the workmanship and the tombs and memorial grasses that are here. Now, I see there are a number of children here, so I want to make it as interesting as I possibly can. Originally, the churches of Britain were simple, functional buildings whose primary object was to worship Almighty God. Always happens, very often, they come to be placed in the honour of self-opinionation now. And it is in that capacity that they are probably the greatest and certainly the cheapest museum that this country has. And this country's history can be illustrated from its parish churches. Because we have been spared the horrors of devastating wars, Britain has one of the finest legacies of parish churches in the whole of Europe. So, this is one of these. Now, the most obvious physical feature that you can see here, something really solid, is this magnificent wooden screen built in approximately 1530. Lancashire was a relatively poor part of the country, so it wasn't until just before the Reformation that you got this screen being built. It's, I won't say well carved, extremely interesting. Those of you who deplore the standards of today will realise we are really going back to a Reformation heritage with apologies to certain people whom I don't personally know. But you will see that these figures are, to say the least, more reminiscent of a pin-up calendar than of a children's Sunday school book. Enough to say. However, it's an extremely beautiful piece of woodwork, and it's continued by a screen probably later in date that is largely the Molyneux family. The oldest part of the church is the tower at the tower end, probably 15th century, and from the outside you can see the magnificent beehives that are a unique feature. As you approach the church from the north, as I did, you get a particularly magnificent view of the whole outline spire beehives across a plain, which reminds one very much of that famous constable picture of Salisbury Cathedral. Of course, the church spires are like at all, but the proportions are of that dignified kind that make it so distinctive. But the rest of the church is about a century later. Of the other outstanding things you can see, there is your 1635 pulpit, which bears on it two important texts from the scriptures. The top one is from Proverbs 24:21, which says, "My son, fear God and the king, and meddle not with them that are given to change." A distinct reference to the Roundheads. You will probably know that at that time, when that pulpit was erected, there was considerable discussion going on in Parliament as to how the church should be constituted. And that is a distinct reference to that. Underneath is something that is the very basis of the Christian faith. From Proverbs 28:13. He that covereth his sin shall not prosper, but whoso confesseth and forsaketh them shall have mercy. This is the cardinal doctrine of the Christian faith, that God is a God of, not only a God who is absolutely righteous and thrice holy, but a God who is always willing to forgive the sinner who repents. In the words of Jesus Christ, that there is joy in the presence of the angels over one sinner who repents. So you have the two strands, the strand of rather rigid conservatism and also the basic doctrine of divine mercy. That's an extremely beautiful pulpit. There are many beautiful pulpits in British parish churches, and this is one that's something like a wine glass, a very narrow stem, and around extremely fine marble. The brass of this church are extremely breathtaking, and there are also very interesting sculptured effigies. The earliest one, which is just in the left-hand corner, as you go over there, and you'll need to go away in very small groups so that everyone can see. And I suggest you go in groups of about 10, look at it quickly, and then pass round. Remember that the service must start at 11:15, so we want to get everything finished by 10. So William Molyneux, who was knight at the Battle of Narroway, and that is his armoured effigy. That is the one in the niche, probably not originally there. That's, I believe, the eastern niche, and it is thought that that effigy was put in there, it was tied to place up. There is a statue or effigy of a bearded knight who is unidentified, but is not thought to be one of the Molyneux at all, which is about 40 years later, to show different important differences in art. If you move farther around, you will see the brass of another Sir William Molyneux who distinguished himself in the Battle of Flodden Field, the battle against Scotland. He died in 1548, and the brass not only has a representation himself, which is too wide, one died and another, but also of the standards he captured at the Battle of Flodden Field. Now, the great thing in a battle was not only to kill your enemy, or capture your enemy, but to capture his standards. And one of the most important persons in any battle was the bearer of the standard. In ancient battles, somewhere on a strong point like a hill near the battlefield would be the standard bearer. And when the standard bearer fell and the flags were captured, that was really the end of the road. The battle was good and won. And so he helped to capture the standard and brought them down and so that's a magnificent evidence for where history is here. Just moving farther round, you have the effigy of Margaret Bolt. Now, she was a Molyneux who married her son, and the Bolt family were married. in Wales, but she left some money for chantry here, that means the priest would say masses for repose of someone's soul, purgatory, and that's why there's a rather useful canopy brass at 1528. Around you, you have the funeral actions, the diamond-shaped things, which show the coats of arms of various families in the large parish of Sefton, with the arms of those into whom they intermarried. The parish of Sefton originally embraced much more than just this village. It included the two Crosbys, and Thornton, and East Blundell. So you find here not only the Molyneux of Sefton, but also the Blundels of Ince Blundell and the Blundels of Crosby. And over that north door you have a monument to Henry Blundell of Crosby, of Ince Blundell, got that from today, Henry Blundell of Ince Blundell, who died in 1810. He was a great benefactor of the arts and very interested in the artistic progress of Liverpool, a member of the Royal Institution. And he, it was, who built up the collection of Ince Blundell marbles that's now in Liverpool Museum. And if you had time to go to the Liverpool Museum, on the first floor there is a display of what is a very small selection of the Ince Blundell marbles, which were originally housed in a place called Pantheon, that is still in the grounds of Ince Blundell Hall, which is now a hospital. And there's a little chapel there with the pews of the family, where members of the family something lie buried. The Sefton also had a thing called a mock corporation, which was amazing fun. It was basically an eating and drinking club, and they met together to mimic and mock the activities of the real corporation of Liverpool nearby. And they met at the Punch Bowl, and they had their own pew, and it is there just at the back. The Good Canon's booklet, which I would recommend you all to purchase, it's only 50 pence, and in the days when I used to do my Merseyside Heritage walkabouts, I would have been glad of a booklet like this. He points out things like the dog whipper's pew. He draws our attention to the brass chandeliers, and also you'll notice the texts on the wall. Many medieval churches used to have paintings on the wall designed to implant in people's minds fear of the Last Judgment and many other things. These were replaced at the time of the Reformation by texts, and it's rather difficult to decipher them, but nonetheless you can pick out the words. Hawkshead Parish Church in the Lake District has an extremely good set which are restored, and one of them is in dialect. It says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, was with God, and the Word was God." It's in dialect, and partly to get it into the little spandrels between the arch. The early Bible, chain Bible of the church, not in fact the original one, but to give us an example, a 1596 Bible with a special translation of a certain phrase that is well known from the book of Jeremiah, which I'll leave you to spot if you look at the Bible. Is there in the choir there. It's in a glass case, and you may have, some of you will have time probably to look at it. One further and very important feature that will interest the children. You all know the alphabet. Well, see if you can find the alphabet on the ends of the pews. And there are 3 letters missing. Nearly all the other letters are there, but there are 3 letters missing. The alphabet pews. So you can find the A, and on the north aisle of the church, you have symbols of the Passion. They may be regarded by experts as being rather crude, but to my mind they're rather beautiful, because the members of the Passion, the cross of Christ, like the absolute state of Christian faith. I'm not an Anglican myself, I'm a nonconformist. But it doesn't matter because the heart of Christian faith is the cross of Christ. And the symbols of passion are found in the North Island. George will be able to pick out more. You know the story of the death of Jesus, how he was put on the cross. And all the various objects associated with that, nails and so on, you'll find a little carving on the end of the pews. So perhaps while older people are looking at the brass and so on, you can look at those and find there should be something for all of you. So I think we better get moving quite honestly. We're about 10. So I'd like to go around and say all groups around the church and
my wife piled my plate, you see, so therefore it's half the size it normally be.
Ladies and gentlemen, very nice. Yes. We're going to have a look at this clock. Isn't that beautiful?
As President of the Liverpool and District Family History Society, which of course is concerned very largely with the building up of family histories. I don't know if anyone who seriously tackled the Molyneux family. It's certainly a heart-stopping task to face. But I know that some of you, from questions which you asked yesterday and conversation I've had with you, have undertaken themselves to one branch of the family, at any rate, the particular branch that they were interested in. If you has not tried this game of constructing a family tree, then you've really not much idea of the difficulties attached to it. With the help of the family Bible and Grandma's memory, you can get back a certain distance fairly easily, and then, of course, difficulties occur. Gordon Reed, who has looked after a fair number of the records belonging to the Sefton family, has got together a small display of genealogical material, which some of you have seen, I understand, at the dinner last night, and some of you have still to see it. It is in one of the rooms which will be opened up after this meeting here. And if you look on the far table, you will see, stretched out from one end of the room to the other, the genealogical table of the mother news. That is keeping to the center, not dealing with all the stray branches, of course, that go on either side. Some years ago, I edited the transactions of the Historic Society of Lancashire and Cheshire. And we were doing an article about one of the Cheshire families. And I said, well, they had something like 29 generations which they could trace. And I remember meeting Mr. Cornwall Lee, the family was, there's many Lees as fleas in Cheshire, they say, but Cornwall Lee was one of the Lee branches. And I met him in Liverpool, and he brought along the pedigree which he expected me to put on the pages of the transactions. Well, he brought it with 2 rows of wallpaper tucked under his arm. This was the only way he could get it on. He'd done it at the back with rows of wallpaper. And I had the difficult task of talking to the printers to get this on what was called a throwout from the volume. You see, it was tucked in between the pages and it unfolded so as to get it on. And I don't think I could read it now. My eyesight has deteriorated. And I was fairly young then, and I could just say, yes, that's all right. I think everybody can read that. Now I know differently. It was printed so small that I'm sure a lot of members couldn't read it. But this is the trouble with genealogies, particularly of a family as big as this. If you have a look at this, don't be despair. Don't give up. Don't despair straight away. Because if you take a measurable area and not be too ambitious, then I think you can make up a very interesting genealogical tree of the branch of the family that you are a member of. And I could encourage you to do that. But just one hint. Don't think that if you get a complete list of the generations that you've set for yourself, it's very much more interesting if you can at the same time find out what these ancestors of yours were like. They all tend to differ, you know, and they all tend to have special interests of their own. So the best type of genealogy is really one that is not only a list of successors, but also it's a descriptive story of the various members and generations of the family. It's so easy to make mistakes, but don't worry about them. Everybody in genealogies make mistakes, and the first part of that special genealogy that's on show there will take a lot of proving if it is true. It's broadly true, I don't mean that, but there have been guesses, and there are always guesses. Especially 19th century historians made guesses. Let me warn you against them. I'm sure that in 100 years' time, people will say, 20th century historians made guesses too. Well, the amount of information that is available is constantly growing. Now, those of you, one or two perhaps, who are seriously inclined to spend their retirement on the family history will find that most of the records concerning this family are now in Preston. They're there in the Record Office of Lancashire. Until 1974, of course, Roxburgh, Sefton, the whole of this area was part of southwest Lancashire. It's only some civil servants who messed the thing up. Thought they would save money by creating a new county called Merseyside, which I find in moving about Merseyside a great deal that many people would like to see the back of. But this messes up when you've already written a history of Lancashire and you've included places like Liverpool and Barrow-in-Furness, you see, neither of which are in Lancashire nowadays. And in fact, Lancashire got divided up in 1974 into 3 parts. They even gave parts of South Lancashire to Cheshire. There were certain parts of it they could have free of charge, as far as I was concerned. But nevertheless, it did mess it up a bit. The north part of Lancashire was given to a new county called Cumbria. I mention this largely for the people who come from overseas because they won't be as familiar with it. We even, what did they say, regularised the frontier between Lancashire and Yorkshire. And people didn't quite know where they were. Were they Merseyside, Greater Manchester, Cumbria, or Lancashire? Well, therefore, it is quite logical, even though it doesn't seem it now, to say that the main records should be up in Preston. Some of them were given there by members of the family and willed to be kept in Preston. So, if some of you are going to pursue it, then go up to the record office and see what you can do. You won't make much progress to begin with, but with endeavour and patience, you will do something along those lines. These documents here are some that came from the house when it was eventually handed over to Merseyside County Council, which in turn has handed it over to Liverpool City Council. And they, I'm told by Mr. Gordon Reed, who was here and was the archivist responsible, that they are intended to go up to Preston to join the rest. So Preston will be the centre for any genealogical beavers among you who want to see about your family. It's an interesting hobby, and it's one that's growing very much, especially in England. We've got quite a lot of societies now, all with quite big membership. It's certainly family history is something which is proving very attractive at the moment. So I thought I'd just add those few words to what I said yesterday about the family. I'm afraid that the parson got the family motto a bit wrong this morning. It didn't say to live is to conquer. It really is translated as to live is to conquer enough. That if you manage to live, you have conquered enough. You can't ask for more than that. And I think it makes the motto, rather than to say to live is to conquer. It's not, the classical scholars, it isn't est, it's sit that is the main verb. Right. Well, thank you very much. I've greatly appreciated the opportunity of coming and meeting the society. And I hope tomorrow, when you'll have a good day, weather-wise, to do your trip to the Scots and then over to the farmhouse, which was very much a Catholic centre in the troubled days. And then after that, you're going to see a bit of the beauties of North Lancashire at Abbeystead. Right. Thank you very much.
Which past and an exciting future. Prompted was the bequest of King William Osbert Montagu, the 7th and last Earl of Sefton, who died here in 1972. For 8 centuries, the Montagu family have dominated the scene of South West Lancashire.